Hi all, let's have a look at another amazing game from the TSEC Season 15 Super Final. So this is in round 81 and Stockfish playing white. So Leela playing with the black pieces, and we get a King's Indian defense, and we have the move f3, the Simish variation, which was one of my favorite approaches to the King's Indian, where white sometimes plays bishop e3, queen d2, castles queenside with a kind of hack attack on the king's side. It's quite an understandable plan. Now Leela castled here. This is still in the book, given to both. We have bishop e3, e5, and this is the end of the book given. Stockfish plays d5. We have knight h5, queen d2, f5. This seems like a fairly thematic way to treat the position, to play for f5. White castles queenside, knight d7, and now very interesting move, e takes f5 by Stockfish. Bishop d3 is also plausible. For example, this position doesn't seem that bad. So e takes f5, and we have g takes f5. Taking with a piece could run into things like g4. That looks like a bad idea. So g takes f5, knight h3. Very interesting move indeed, knight h3. And this is a little bit of an innovation. There was a game, high-level game over the board with bishop d3 here, as in Ivanchuk against Kupreshik in Lvov 1988. In that game, that ended eventually in a win for black. So you'll see that in the annotated game of this if you want to check out that stem game. So bishop d3 has been seen before. Knight h3 here by Stockfish. Knight c5. King b1. And now a6. I guess there might be a temptation for f4 and bishop takes h3, but white could always slip in bishop takes c5. There are lots of possibilities here to consider, but a6 was played. Bishop d7 is one of the last major stem games from this position. This was seen in the game Liu against Wen in the China City Tournament of 2012. In fact, black, let's have a quick look at that game. Black actually played very energetically later. So we see, although white established an e4 kind of blockade, knight e6 turned the tables a bit, using that pin to go into d4. White actually took that, and then black got a fantastic position going, bishops active, and here white resigned. So an interesting alternative with bishop d7 was a very interesting stem game there. So a6 here, knight f2, and we have b6, and now g4. And I believe Stockfish is really playing this well by taking first on f5, putting a target on f5 and playing g4. The light squares are being undermined here, and with the opposite side castling, white really wants to open lines a bit quicker than black to get at the king. We have the move knight f4. It's a bit of a race, the opposite side castling scenarios generally. So knight f4 was played. If f takes g4, f takes knight f4, it seems white could play like this, for example h4, h5, and these two are actually quite menacing here to sort of act as a battering ram for Leela's king side. So this is just an example, and maybe even f4 could be challenged like this, and if the queen got involved, black's pieces could actually be repulsed, and tactically it's suspect. Yeah, the queen could end up getting in trouble as well. So there's a storm brewing here. This is a very fictional variation, but there's a storm brewing here already, it seems. So knight f4, we have h4, bishop d7, and now h5. Yeah, the pawns are knocking at the king side's door of the king. F takes g4 is played. On king h8, perhaps Stockfish could challenge the f4 knight. So for example, this position, white's always got the bishop takes c5 mechanism for maybe installing the form pawn, Stockfish with the form pawn, and getting a control of e4. And this looks very positionally comfortable for white. Indeed, that looks like an ideal dream scenario to have against the King's Engine. So we have actually, anyway, in the game, we have f takes g4. So this is pretty committal by Leela. The light squares are kind of raw, they're a bit sensitive now. Especially the e4 square, and both of these knights kind of poised to use the e4 square in some cases. We have a5, bishop e2, a4 now is played. That's interesting. So a4, you might think, what about snatching this light square bishop? It seems as though white's still in a very pleasant situation here. For example, this situation, grabbing the e4 square, taking on c5, that standard mechanism, even here, works very well. So that protects the knight. Bishop can get squished, and even this scenario where white's the exchange down, the attack seems to be crashing through here in a tactical manner. For example, like this is very, very unpleasant for black. Or if, yeah, it's very unpleasant, these kind of scenarios where there's big king safety issues, as well as like losing pieces and stuff. So a4 was played, not taking the bishop. It doesn't seem to do black that many favors to take this bishop. So we have rook going to g1 here, rook d g1. Knight takes now, though. Queen takes e4, which seems quite logical to open up the bishop. And you might think there's a threat of doubling the pawns. Stockfish actually just ignores that and just suppresses the a4 pawn. Doesn't care about the double pawns here, and that is a kind of very key defensive bishop in any case. So Leela, wisely perhaps, queen e7 is played instead of taking on c3. Just as an example, this situation can quickly backfire once white starts using the dark squares, breaks through with g6. Look at these vulnerable dark squares after bishop d4, for example. It can get pretty horrible, the situation. Pins bishop on the g file, pins rook on f7. It's a bit of a nightmare there. So queen e7, g5 was played, queen f7, g6, and now queen f3. The queen is running a little bit short on squares with this invasion into white's position. It's starting to be really quite precarious, this position for black. On queen f6, though, there is h6, for example, like this, and squish g7, squishing that bishop. So not too many great ideas for black. And on h6, by the way, on queen f6, there's h6. And you might have thought, wasn't that also knight takes e4? Knight takes e4 runs into bishop f5, which could actually save black, just for the record, with an equal position. But no, the squishing h6 will do. Okay, so queen f3, and we have g takes h7. Yeah, black's king looks to be getting in trouble. Rook a e8. Now, here, this could be worsening black's position. Perhaps the best move is bishop f5. The Stockfish evaluation shot up after rook a e8. So let's have a look here. This is a critical position. If queen f7, going back to f7, h6, and here the tactical shot, I wonder if you can guess, if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. White has rook g7 check. So for example, this situation is nasty to say the least for black. Yeah, this is really nasty stuff with this dark square bishop taking that diagonal. Yeah, really is quite crushing. And you might ask, if bishop h8 here, what about bishop h8? bishop e5, or king, sorry, pardon me, king h8. We'll just take the queen. Yeah, it's pretty hopeless. On bishop f5, let's look at the critical bishop f5 instead of rook a e8. It seems on my local Stockfish, king a2 as a prophylaxis move leaves white with a very comfortable attacking position. For example, knight fd1. I know this looks like a mysterious, it's like strengthening move, isn't it? Strengthening c3 and e3, but a backward move. But the queen is kind of very awkwardly placed here, and it covers also the g3 square. So this is a very interesting knight move. If rook a8, rook f1, and we could get this situation where, again, the queen is really precariously placed. So say bishop h3, this kind of thing. White's getting a big edge here, technically. But bishop f8 and bishop f5 may have been the way to go. On h6, it seems black would be fine without. It seems that, you know, this is actually, in this particular situation, technically it's okay for black. It's just if white plays the prophylaxis move, king a2, black seems to get into big trouble on my analysis anyway. So rook a e8. So why is this so bad in this position? It seems two tactical liability factors are conspiring here. The black king is slightly exposed. There's no protective pawns around it. The queen's almost trappable. And in fact, both of these issues come to the foreground here with Stockfish's next move. I wonder if you can spot it if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. So Stockfish to play here at move 26. Okay. Fischer said, you know, tactics flow from superior positions. I believe, give Stockfish its due. It is kind of a superior position, and this tactical move h6 flows from it quite well. So bishop e5 was played. On bishop h8, the tactics flow with rook g7, taking out the fianchetto bishop, and this is just mating black, for example, like that. So bishop e5, but now rook g7 anyway, and the two key factors, the king and the queen, are coming together with white's king pretty snug here on b1. Now king h8 was played. On bishop takes g7, again similar ideas of mating the black king happen. Whatever happens there, the black king kind of gets mated. So king h8, queen g1. Now there's actually a huge threat of queen g6, and then either queen h7 or rook h7 is checkmate. So this is really a significant threat. And Leela plays bishop f5. So cover h7 and the g6 square. Clearly a defensive move. It seems fairly logical. And you'd think, you know, black's position doesn't look all bad, at least in some respects. If queen f5, it seems the prophylaxis move king a2 plays a very interesting role. For example, knight d3, because white could potentially take on c5 and take on e4. If knight d3, taking here and strengthening e4, this is just really nice for white. Queen b1 is a sneaky move threatening checkmate, and it gives white a huge advantage. So white's going to be a whole night up in this fictional variation with queen f5 after king a2. If rook g8 instead, then let's see the devastation with queen g6. Put that on the board. So bishop takes, h takes, double check and mate. And if bishop, yeah, there's no real defense there. If bishop takes c3 there, queen g6, because of the threat of queen h7, and if bishop f5, then there's rook h7. The queen doesn't have to use, the rook can be used for checkmate. So yes, it's big trouble. Sorry, queen g1, bishop f5 was played. So it's big trouble in all these variations because of this queen g6 a huge threat. If bishop takes c3, just another example, queen g6. If black's best is to take here, that's not very good. Yeah, black's just going to get mated. So basically, bishop f5 was played, but now key move, combining both king safety and the queen being kind of trappable. Big clue there. White play. 5 seconds. Okay, rook h3. Yeah, trying to deflect the bishop away from that g6 square. We have queen takes f2, desperate, losing the queen. So queen takes, bishop takes h3, which hits white's queen. Now rook f7, so white's material up. Bishop d4, taking out a very important bishop here for black. Bishop takes is played. If rook takes f7, queen takes f7 is possible. And here, if rook f8, then this is check. Bishop takes e5 is check, and then mate here. So very unpleasant. Now bishop takes, queen takes, knight e5. That was check, knight e5. Rook takes c7. We have bishop f1. So this is gone now, this position, after knight takes. Check, rook f4. Stockfish plays another vicious tactical move, queen e3, with the idea of heading for the g5 square. So if rook takes e4, then queen g5 threatens queen g7 checkmate. If bishop takes c4, then white can just play this for checkmate next move. And if rook g8, rook c8, so threatening queen g7 checkmate. Again, that's just devastation. So after queen e3, we have rook ef8. By the way, on rook takes e4, queen g5. On rook g8, there's queen f6 check here. That's just checkmating. So queen f6 check there, mating. So queen e3, rook ef8, not letting the queen go to g5 just yet. But now knight takes d6 undermines the e5 knight. Rook f1, that e5 knight is taken. And here, yeah, it looks as though the last kind of threat, bishop b1, the pawn's taking the escape square. Stockfish takes out this pawn, which is taking the escape square, by playing queen e8 check, then taking on a4. So these checks will now run out. The king can evacuate pretty safely. After bishop b1, the game was resigned. Both engines thought it was plus 10 for white for the last 10 ply. A fictional game continuation, king b3 check, and say rook g3, queen d1, which heads, not only hitting the bishop, but that beautiful d4 square now means rook g7, and it's all over, bar the shouting. Yeah, this is just desperate to stave off a checkmate. So yeah, a crushing win there by Stockfish. Only 41 moves of white needed. So typically Stockfish wins are quicker than Leela, and you know, the brutal tactician really showed in this game when the dynamic factors of the position, especially the king safety issues, the queen trapping issues, they converged, and Stockfish was incisive enough to kind of mix those two issues, to combine them, to make them really untenable in this game. So I hope you enjoyed this game video. So Stockfish still very, very dangerous engine, of course, especially if you haven't got graphics cards. It's going to remain like the top engine for analysis, I expect, for a considerable time, unless you get like powerful graphics cards and want to run neural networks as well. I think multiple perspectives will be the approach by many players anyway when analysing, say, master games. It's good to have multiple engines, as it always has been. But anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this. You can click on the top left box, which should appear shortly, to become a member at chessmobile.net, play against other YouTubers. You can also test yourself on the variations covered in this and other games from the improved menu, the puzzle books option, which has a link to the annotated game. Comments, questions, donations, see the description. Like, share, subscribes with the notification bell, really appreciated. Thanks very much. puzzle book addendum. Let's just do the first 5, I think, to keep things short. So white's play for a clear advantage here. This looks as though this is in this part continuation. I think just queen takes f5. Okay, that was a bit easy. So here, white play for a clear advantage. I think knight takes f8. Yep, and then taking here is crashing through. Okay, white play here. I think here the squishing h6 for g7, squishing that bishop, which we mentioned. Black's play for a clear advantage here. I think black's fine, I suspect, or bishop takes e4. Oh, bishop takes h7? Or king takes h7? Maybe king takes h7. And then we can block the bishop here. Just one last one. So a clear advantage for white here. It looks as though taking the queen seems like a good idea. Okay. So yeah, all sorts of variations were tested in that puzzle book. If you also if you want to check out the puzzle books, I recommend highly the Famous Players puzzle books. There's Steinitz, Morphy, Tao, Kasparov, Carlson, Kramnik, Fischer. Fischer's my favourite at the moment. I'm working with quite a few students actually with the Fischer book at the moment. Okay, thanks very much.